Despite the rudimentary conditions of his home, 10-year-old prodigy T.S. Pivot lives on a ranch in rural Montana with his gloomy big sister, an entomologist mother, and his emotionally aloof and silent cowboy father. T.S. has developed a deep interest in science. In his spare time, he frequently reads books and experiments with new ideas. We also found out that T.S. his twin brother Layton was killed in a shooting accident not too long ago, and that T.S. holds himself responsible for his death. As he and his sibling were playing in the property's abandoned barn, disaster struck. T.S. reveals that in contrast to his introverted mother, his cowboy father was very much an extrovert. Layton drew the parallels between the two. Now that his kid is dead, the cowboy has trouble leaving his room and maintaining relationships with T.S. scientifically minded research. His mother, who has a Ph.D., has recently become obsessed with insects. To help her get over the pain of her child's death, she also collects specimens of all kinds. But his sister Gracie can't stop thinking about modeling and acting roles. T.S. has a hard time getting anyone's attention and is constantly let down. His instructor thinks his knowledge and ability to think creatively are signs of arrogance, so she constantly criticizes him in the classroom. As a result, T.S. usually plays by himself, spending his time creating inventions of dubious quality and taking the family dog for walks around the ranch. A couple of days later, he and Gracie are outside on their porch, playing with corn kernels. T.S.'s mother answers the phone when it suddenly rings. She cannot believe that someone is actively searching for her missing kid. T.S. answers the phone shortly thereafter and discovers that it is from the world-famous Smithsonian Institution. It turns out that his design for a perpetual motion wheel powered by magnets has earned him a coveted award. The award ceremony is set to take place in Washington, D.C., and T.S. has now been invited to attend. However, the museum director Miss Gibson, who is on the line, believes that T.S. is actually a grown man and that the tiny boy talking to her is the son of the prize winner. T.S. is first hesitant since he is unable to leave his residence. His cowboy father would never allow his family walk outside the state of Montana, let alone travel to D.C. T.S., however, intends to take the plunge because it represents his finest opportunity to date professionally. At last, he makes up his mind to leave home in pursuit of the treasure. Layton's old room is a mess of dusty toys and furniture that his parents can't bear to get rid of, so he packs up his belongings and takes one last look at the room before leaving. T.S. closes the door with tears in his eyes, still holding himself responsible for the murder of his twin brother. Soon after, he leaves by walking by his sister and dad. Neither of them paid any attention to him, though, as they were too preoccupied with their everyday activities. This makes T.S. feel a little down, because he realizes that his absence won't be really felt. The next thing you know, the child is dragging his huge bag to the railway station, armed with all the necessities like binoculars, a compass, winter clothing, and so on. When T.S. arrives at the train station, he finds that he is early and decides to hurry things up by climbing a traffic sign and turning on the stop signal. The strategy is successful, and a train arrives within minutes. T.S. excitedly boards it with his enormous bag, but regrettably a few of authorities snotus him, understanding that he doesn't have a ticket. In spite of their relentless pursuit, our little genius escapes by scaling a tower and boarding the next train. As soon as the car starts driving, T.S. manages to elude capture. He is a scientist and a cook. He learns to smoke bacon on the way to one of the rail cars where he plays and fantasizes that Layton is still there with him. This demonstrates how deeply he mourns the loss of his sibling. Finally, the train pulls into Wyoming, where guards get out and inspect the car, whereupon they discover that T.S. hides is auctioning it off. Display the transporting camper van. But the guard is wary, so he opens up the camper to have a look around. T.S. acts out a scene where a family sits down to dine in front of a life-size cardboard stencil. The outside guard may have thought he was intended to be there as a component of the piece. T.S., having learned his lesson from the close call, decided to sleep inside the camper that night. When the train finally stops, he gets off to get something to eat. To clouds, a wanderer, and T.S. soon strike up a conversation. The following scene finds two clouds inviting the youngster into his trailer and sharing a tale about a bird's triumphant journey to its final destination, despite having a rough road full of ups and downs. So that T. S. can buy himself some food. The old guy gives him some money.
T.S. then orders hot dogs from a neighboring takeout restaurant.
Fast food is something he's never tried before in his life. His pious cowboy father strictly forbade the family from ever eating anything that didn't come straight from the farm. For T.S., this elevates the hot dog to a new level of significance. The latter is perhaps even more repulsive. The shopkeeper was questioned by 2 police officers who had just arrived if she had seen a missing youngster. The lads are subsequently shown to be none other than T.S. himself, thanks to a poster that is immediately produced. The police officers, however, are too preoccupied with one another to notice the young youngster standing right next to them. When they're no longer around,
T.S. awkwardly approaches the shopkeeper and shares the sad news that his parents have passed away and that he now lives on his own.
His luck, I guess. As he walks away, she says nothing. For T.S. sake, that's wonderful, but I think the woman should be arrested on her way back to the train.
T.S. considers calling his family from a payphone, but he can't quite bring himself to do it.
After leaving his bag in a nearby electrical grid box, he goes down the train lines the following day while carrying only a backpack. Simultaneously, a cruel police officer drives up behind him and demands to know where he has been.
T.S. lies once more, claiming that he is from Chernobyl, and he also starts speaking a foreign language. T.S. is almost caught when the police officer discovers his deception and begins after him.
He escapes by climbing to the top of a dividing bridge over which a boat is passing.
T.S. is left dangling from the bridge as the risky maneuver backfires.
As a result, the officer becomes panicked and tries to make amends with the little child as quickly as possible for following him.
Happily, T.S. he also explains how to go back up there.
The youngster, being smart, figures out how to utilize physics to his advantage, and makes it to safety. However, he hurts his ribs during the fight, which makes everything extremely painful. To make matters worse, his compass and favorite *sparrow skeleton that he brought along are also destroyed.
Broken-hearted, T.S. decides to discard his 2 possessions by dumping them in the river.
He then proceeds to the highway and seeks to hitchhike a ride. Almost every car passes him by without even a glance, then a nice trucker called Rick pulls over to help. It turns out Rick is the type of guy who provides rides to strangers, as evidenced by the fact that he frequently does so while displaying his picture album in front of these strangers. Clearly, this is a warning sign of the highest kind. As they continue to speak, Rick notices that the youngster has sustained serious injuries to his chest. Because of this, he suggests that T.S. see a doctor as soon as possible, but T.S. insists that he is well.
T.S. is still worried that the police would catch up with him and force him to return to his family's ranch in Montana. T.S. eventually makes it to the Smithsonian after Rick leaves him off in Washington.
Once there, he is met by 2 skeptics at the front desk. Winner of the coveted award, 2 members of BTS. Nonetheless, they have the institution's director, Miss Gibson, called in. Later, she comes and is taken aback to meet a little kid who insists he is a legendary researcher. The young inventor, however, disproves her by providing a detailed description of his creation. They marvel at his vision and eloquence as he describes the other scientific modules he is developing at the moment. As they continue talking, Miss Gibson begins to relax and accept that he is in fact the actual T.S. Pivot.
Again, T.S. pretends to be an orphan when he is not.
Miss Gibson, who is solely interested in him for his skill, buys it right away. She decides to get him examined out at the hospital. Miss Gibson claims she wants to be his new guardian and promises to take care of him, but all she really wants is to be in the limelight.
T.S. is too ignorant to see the truth in this, so he concedes.
He then extends an invitation to accompany him to the meeting where the coveted Baird Award for his innovation will be presented. Miss Gibson does a wonderful job of caring for T.S. during the following few days. She becomes possessive, but only after a while. Perhaps someday. She goes so far as to study his brain to learn more about the boy's mental state. The boy's brain is developing normally, the doctor says once the tests are complete. In reality, he is just like any other kid his age. But this just makes Miss Gibson angry, and she scolds the doctor, calling her unqualified. After that, we attended the awards presentation, where Miss Gibson had T.S. on the edge of her seat. The director, who is clearly just interested in promoting herself, dresses him up and tells him how to act in ways that would help her in her career.
During the meeting, T.S. sits at a table by himself as Miss Gibson tells the other attendants about how she has been caring for him since he was an orphan.
The visitors are just as fascinated and enthusiastic to meet the 10-year-old youngster who invented this revolutionary new scientific tool. The lads were suddenly surrounded by a gaggle of fans. They all start to congratulate him with broad grins on their faces, but T.S. is on to them. He is convinced that the hosts are pulling their guests' legs since he is familiar with the precise formula for a genuine grin of joy. In the following scene, the show's producer congratulates the little boy on his discovery and invites him on stage.
T.S. shuffles up to the microphone but says nothing for a time.
He then shakily explains his history and thanks everyone for coming to hear him speak.
T.S. gains self-assurance as he learns the ropes and starts talking about his late sibling.
At last, he explains what he did wrong that led to his brother's death. The two brothers were shooting about in the barn that fateful day.
T.S.
the science nerd, wanted to measure the velocity of a bullet, while Layton just wanted to shoot. The two of them agreed to assist each other out, but then the gun jammed right before they could fire.
T.S. reached for the trigger to make sure it was loaded, but accidentally shot his brother in the head.
T.S. sobbingly, the protagonist, laments at the story's end that he is no longer a topic of conversation. The tragic tale moves the audience to tears as well. The teen is all set to make an appearance on a tabloid talk program. His agent, Miss Gibson, watches the interview from a guest room while it airs live on the show.
T.S. is asked by the presenter, "How did you come up with this invention?"
The latter always tries to provide some scientific context, but is cut off by the host, who is solely concerned with maintaining the show's momentum. When the host realizes that talking about T.S. brother would generate a lot of viewer interest, he or she gradually changes the subject. However, Miss Gibson was aware of this, therefore she had previously counseled T.S. to /snot dive into the emotive matter. The youngster follows his lead. The unexpected appearance of T.S.'s mother during the interview takes everyone by surprise. As a result, Miss Gibson is fuming because she has lost control of the youngster.
T.S.'s mother sobs because she should have been there more for her son.
The small kid is relieved to learn that Layton's death was not his fault, and that she agrees with him. He gives his mom a big, teary embrace before he leaves the interview. The problem is that there's a drunk backstage. When Miss Gibson begins cursing at the youngster, his mother loses her cool and strikes the opportunistic lady, accusing her of exploiting her son. What the hell? The host of the show requests the mother and son give some time and resume the conversation from earlier while he goes live with his set members. When T.S. Cowboy's dad shows there, he punches him in the face and knocks him out. After this, the family joyfully goes home.
T.S. reveals the birth of his brother or sister in the concluding scene of a monologue.
The youthful genius challenges himself by asking for an improved perpetual motion device. He has now seen his new baby siblings' cradles on the front porch being rocked by the same machine. After the credits roll, T.S. sister Gracie is preparing herself for the approaching Miss Montana contest. If you like this type of video, please subscribe for updates. In order to aid the channel, please enable alerts and like the content. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Unexpectedly, in spite of T.S.'s mom drove to Washington to surprise him and is now sitting in the crowd.